Welcome to the Bothell City Council special meeting of July 26, 2016. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All council members are present except for Councilmember Agnew and Councilmember Spivey. The first item on our agenda is to discuss the Mercantile fire, and I'm going to come down to the podium to read a proclamation. So I hoped I never had to do this in my tenure as a mayor of the city. But the Mercantile fire is a terrible event that's happened to our city. The city has received outstanding support both regionally and internally from our community. And we've heard from the governor's office, the state senators and representatives, as well as the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. That's a federal government entity, Congresswoman Del Bene, and others, King County Executive, Snohomish County Executive, and more. On behalf of the entire council, I want to thank everyone for their response, and now we are moving towards recovery. With that said, I do have a proclamation to read, and the council will have an opportunity to ratify this at our next meeting, but I need to make a state of emergency. So, whereas the Emergency Services Director has reported to the Mayor of the City of Bothell that beginning on the 22nd day of July 2016, the Mercantile building fire has caused extensive property and economic damage to the downtown corridor due to the fire and water damage in the City of Bothell. And whereas these problems have created a threat to life and property, all available resources are committed to disaster work, and the city requires supplemental assistance. And whereas this constitutes an emergency as defined in the City of Bothell Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, and it necessitates the utilization of emergency powers granted under RCW 3852-070. Therefore, it is proclaimed by the Mayor of the City of Bothell that an emergency exists in the City of Bothell. Therefore, the City of Bothell departments are authorized to do the following. Number one, enter contracts and incur obligations necessary to combat such emergency situations to protect the health and safety of persons and property. Number two, provide appropriate emergency assistance to the victims of such disaster. And three, other actions as appropriate. Each City of Bothell department is authorized to exercise the power vested under this proclamation in the light of the existence in extreme emergency situation without regard to time-consuming procedures and formalities prescribed by law. So with that, I'll hand the floor over to the chief, fire chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As everybody's aware of now, on July 22nd, approximately 2:45 in the morning, we had a major fire in downtown. We have some pictures back from 1915, and this is the old Mercantile building as it stood back then. Another picture 100 years later, how it looked a couple years ago. How it looked on July 14th, 2016, and I believe that they were getting ready to build the final floor on this structure. And then this was the vision of how the Mercantile building was going to be finished. But unfortunately, on Friday morning, we had a fire, and the latest information that has come from alcohol, tobacco, and firearms is they've investigated the slab, and it has been undetermined. There's not enough evidence on the slab to determine what the cause of origin is. They're still going to go ahead and keep the case open and conduct interviews. They still have some interviews to conduct, but that was late-breaking news today. And so this is what the slab looked like the morning of Friday morning or early Friday afternoon. You can see the Mercantile building, and then also to the left and down you see the Bothell Mall structure. The Bothell Mall was damaged because of radiant heat, It wasn't, it could have had some embers that torched off the roof, but there was extensive damage. There were also other buildings that were affected. Sundance Energy had some blistering on the front of the siding. You can see the deep char in the railroad ties that were holding up the embankment. The deck was damaged. Wells Fargo, I believe this is Wells Fargo, correct? Yeah, Wells Fargo, the siding was burned off. You can see the char up around the roof line. This is the edge of the Bothell Mall and going into Rheaume City Wines, extensive damage. Frontier to the, it'd be to the east of the building, it had some burning on the roof, and there was a concern about the communication link that supported much of the city being affected in a negative manner, but we were able to get crews in there from Frontier as soon as possible to flip switches and make sure that our communication network continued throughout the city. And then this is the Bothell Mall. First, I need to say how proud I am of the fire and EMS personnel. Waking up at 2:45 in the morning, going to a call that's not very far away from your station, and making really good decisions in a timely manner, not only from the incident commander, who was Rob Van Spandonk, but from each company who worked within that structure and says, this is what we need to do to contain more buildings from catching on fire. So many decisions were made that reduced the impact. Again, it happened Friday, 2:47. And really the incident was from 185th down to 222 or 522, and then from 103rd to 101st. And the reason was is we had a strong south wind, and it could have been a fire generated wind, but it was having debris and large particles of burned material moving into the neighborhoods. If you go down there, you can see radiant heat that is affecting the trees that are 100 yards away. And so this was a very hot fire. So we had crews, mutual aid resources, up on 185th putting out brush fires, grass fires, and protecting those houses so that we didn't have collateral damage as a result of this fire. We had 3 alarms. An alarm is basically 4 engines, a couple ladders, an aid car, medic unit, and an incident commander. We called 3 of those, so we kept multiplying our first in units. And then we got to the point where we still needed more units, so we called a task force from the city of Seattle. There were 12 fire departments that came to help us, 46 emergency vehicles, and approximately 126 personnel. So this was a significant fire by any standards. We also activated the Emergency Coordination Center. It was activated at 4:45 in the morning, and it deactivated at 12 p.m., so noon. It was staffed during that period anywhere from 15 to 20 people, and it maintained a situational awareness within the city. It filled emergency scene requests, and it also provided some public information and organized a press conference that we had in this room Friday morning at 11 a.m. You're going to hear more about the public information and press conference when another speaker comes up. Again, the investigation was started that morning. Soon after the fire was out, there was a man walking down the street with a helmet on, and he didn't look like a firefighter, and it had ATF on his helmet. And so we asked him, somebody asked him what he was doing there. And he says he's from the local ATF, and they are willing to come out free of charge and help us investigate this fire. So we've had 15 to 20 people here since, and they came from all over the nation. People started flying in. We had our first briefing on Saturday. We've had briefings every day since then, and their final briefing is going to be tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So they worked with our city investigators, Frank Shasky, Butch Noble, and Doug Wirtz, and the police detectives, and they worked very well together. In fact, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms made a comment during one of the briefings. They says they have felt more welcome in the city of Bothell than they've ever felt any other place they've gone. So I think that is a kudos to the city of Bothell. As I said, the cause has been undetermined, and the case is still open to complete interviews. I want to share that it takes a village. We've heard that numerous times, and in this case, it truly does take a village to put out this type of a fire. This was a fire-centric event, but everybody in the city was involved. So the police chief is going to be coming up to share a portion of what police did, Public Works Director, the Assistant City Manager, and then we'll conclude with this interim city manager, and after that you'll have an opportunity to ask questions or provide comments. So I will be available for any questions you may have, but we're going to continue with the presentation with our police chief, Carol Cumming. Hit the enter button. Yeah.
Good evening. As Chief Van Horn said, it really does take a village, and I was so proud of the city employees and how they came together as a team to address this tragic incident. Police, when we arrive at a scene, our initial response is for life safety. So our first officer was at the scene in less than a minute. The initial thing that we try to do is close roads, obviously to try to keep people out of the area. We had, in addition to the extreme efforts of the firefighters, we actually had officers out there using their fire extinguishers and even their feet to put out small fires that were showing up on lawns and other areas outside the at the perimeter of the fire. We also evacuated some citizens. Our officers were aware of a few citizens that live or sleep in the area. There was one resident, for example, that has a small apartment above one of the businesses. So I think I was told that they evacuated at least 3 individuals from that downtown core. And then, of course, not knowing what kind of fire this is, to contact people that they see at the scene and get their contact information, identify them for future follow-up. Our secondary response, of course, once we get there, is to then maintain that scene security, which we did both during the daytime and then in the evening for the first few days, keeping an officer at scene to keep the scene integrity. We also helped maintain, along with Public Works, but maintain the street closures during the daytime of the event. Our post-incident response has involved working closely with ATF, and again, I'm grateful for the assistance they've provided. They've been true partners in the investigation of this incident. We've also sent detectives out to do video retrieval. For some businesses have cameras that may have captured certain areas of the downtown core for this event. And then again, witness identification. One of the things that we found very useful in this incident was our social media. The social media put out information about traffic, road closures, putting out information, assisting fire with some of the messaging that they were trying to put out, things like media staging areas, for example. Answering citizen questions that they had and being able to put out an answer that others will see. That also helps with our media partners because they look to things like Twitter and Facebook to get updated. We also used it to a degree to help to thank the citizens for their support. Just as I think our first tweet that went out on the fire received almost 20,000 initial impressions. The road closures, I believe I was told it was 23,000. If you put all of the tweets together, the number of impressions of it going to a device was over 158,000. So a lot of people. And then there's ways of breaking it down as far as who touches it, who sends it. But needless to say, it was a good example to us about the importance of social media in these kind of events. And then finally, I wanted to thank the citizens. This was a big incident, required a lot of hands-on, and the support of the citizens of this community was just overwhelming, starting from the very first day when we had food and people coming by and saying, you know, how they could help. And that has continued on, and it just goes to show, again, what a wonderful, wonderful community that we serve. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Director Leonhardt from Public Works.
Thank you, Chief, and good evening, Council. So during the event, the primary role for the Public Works Department was to provide enough water supply as well as pressure to fight the fire. We estimate about 1.7 million gallons went to fight this fire, which is roughly equivalent to the amount of water our entire service area uses in a day. It was a lot of water. So that was our primary thing and the first thing that I thought of when I woke up on Friday morning. After the initial response, our primary attention turns to cleanup. So clearing the rights of way, as well as clearing our storm drain system to try to minimize the amount of debris and foam that ended up in the Sammamish River. So those were our primary focal points. Again, I echo both of the chiefs saying that the team effort was amazing. It really did feel like an entire city effort as opposed to feeling like a fire, police, and public works effort. And the community support, how everybody has rallied around each other as well as staff, has been incredibly touching. The other role I played during the event was as the ECC director. And in that role, what I do and what the ECC does is we provide support, general support, to the folks who are actually working in the scene. So that was our primary focal point once we activated the ECC. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant City Manager Peter Trozen.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This one will be very brief. With respect to media, you've already heard a little bit about the press conference that was held at 11 on Friday morning, but what you may not know that there were quite a few other interviews, both on camera and over the phone. 5 press releases were issued through Tuesday, and a coordinated joint press release with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and at least 40 phone calls and 40 emails were answered by the combined team of the PIOs at Fire, Police, and our own communications officer, Barbara Rheaume, all of whom participated in the ECC when we activated that very early on Friday morning. We continue to field media inquiries and continue to use Facebook and Twitter. And one of the interesting experiences was when we were first in the ECC, and I was handed a list of street closures. Mike Johnson used his phone to photograph that list, that handwritten list, and then he tweeted that list out. So a little bit of old school, a little bit of new school combined. Offers of assistance, as you've heard, both from the mayor and from Chief Van Horn, there were many offers of assistance, and within just about an hour of being activated, the governor's office was giving me a call in the ECC and offering whatever they could to help us out. But King County, the Chamber of Commerce here in the city, the North Shore Rotary is helping out. You've heard about the representatives' offices and our various other political representatives. But now, perhaps the most important part of this is that, very quickly in the ECC, attention turned to recovery because we knew that the fire would be put out at some point. So now we're in that stage, and community support for Main Street businesses has been outstanding, as you've heard. As you know, many separate fundraising efforts have sprung up, one of which will be having a block party this Thursday from 4 to 8 on Main Street. And we in the city have begun setting up a business assistance team, which we plan to house in the community risk reduction spaces on the first floor here, adjacent to the fire marshal spaces. Now, it may take a village to do all this, but actually we're going to ask a state to help out as well. We'll be asking for support of this effort from the Office of Emergency Management. And this team will provide a single point of contact for assistance and information for any business impacted by the fire. Our focus is in determining what federal or state assistance in the way of Small Business Administration or FEMA grants or loans might be available. We will seek to help business owners in their salvage efforts, try to facilitate that, expediting building permits, and then, of course, trying to accelerate the Main Street enhancement work with construction planned for 2017, if possible. The city will be hosting an open house tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock for any businesses impacted by the fire. We will have representatives from the county and from the state who will be here to provide consultation and just information on what kind of assistance they can provide. So at that point, let me turn it over to our interim city manager, Bob Jean.
Mr. Mayor, I think George Petrie, the owner of the Mercantile building, and with Goodman Real Estate's here, I think he would like to make a few comments, might be appropriate here, and then I'll turn it back to council.
Please. I'm George Petrie, president of Goodman Real Estate. And the first thing I wanted to say is we're so thankful for the response that the city provided, both the public works, the fire, and the police. We're very saddened by the loss. It's a big hit for not only the community, but for us. We always, in building a building, believe that we're a part of that village. We're creating the village. So in moving on to the recovery phase, we are very bullish, for lack of a better word, on Bothell. We think it has a great future. The leadership that the city has shown both in the present and in the past in moving the highway and creating an area where a village can be created is a bold move that I've actually touted to many cities that we develop in, saying, look at them, they had a vision and it's being carried out. So we're there to help continue that vision. Bit of a setback, but the reality is out of those ashes will rise that building.
Great, thank you. City Manager, do you have more you wanted to add?
Well, just a quick comment. And as I've only been with the city a month. I must say I was totally impressed. I have worked in different communities and been in different incidences. The biggest one in my career was the Loma Prieta earthquake, the one down in San Francisco Bay Area when the World Series was on, and that shook that whole region. And I watched the response there. This was obviously for Bothell a huge impact, but this team, this group of people, they did great. And I just, this is when the real test comes of your people and the quality of the people you've hired. And it was top to bottom, line staff to command staff. These folks did a great job. And I'm new, I'm just learning about them, but you should be proud of the work they did for the citizenry. So I think the only question now would be if there's any comments or questions council has or any public. We're here to answer those questions.
Okay, is there any comment from Deputy Mayor?
I wondered if Mr. Petrie would entertain a question. Yeah, could you step up to the mic? I wanted to let you know how thrilled, as a former member of the Landmark Board, that we were with your willingness to preserve the facade. And I know it's early days, but I wondered if you had thought about your plans in terms of, I've heard that facade is now no longer stable and usable.
I don't know actually what the status is of the facade. For us, urban fabric, and I use that word somewhat loosely here, is important. Being slightly different than everybody around you is good, but yet still fitting in. And if you were to look at Goodman Real Estate as an entity going back for 25 years, you'd find that we have a really strong effort in maintaining historical integrity. So we've owned the Smith Tower, we've owned the Medical Dental Building, we've owned a lot of buildings in Pioneer Square. And Bothell has its rich history. It's a little limited. There's not a lot of buildings. So that building, I think, is important. And so we're going to do everything we can to, if nothing else, recreate it. while the building itself, I'm not sure what the integrity is yet. It'll probably be a little while if the actual bricks can be maintained, or you have to kind of replace it.
Right. I just know there have been a lot of comments on Facebook about historic downtown, and I just wanted to encourage you that we were so pleased that you were willing to keep that facade, and so
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
It's a priority. It's a priority.
fantastic. Thanks.
Councilmember McNeil?
Yes, George, I wanted to also thank you for coming in. And I know it's a terrible loss, but I think it shows how dedicated our community really is to working with each other. So I applaud you, and I look forward to seeing what you do with the community and helping to restore Main Street. I did want to say something. I had the opportunity to visit the scene and see some of the firefighters that had just gotten done fighting, and the police and Public Works working there. I personally was able to see that, and I got to tell you, hats off. I mean, I can't tell you enough. I got to applaud you for what you guys did out there. Seriously, we got to give them a hand, because I've never seen, in my 50 years of life, I've never seen anything like that. You know, you hear stories of natural disasters and things like that, but when they happen in your backyard and you see everybody come together, that's special. And what a great community Bothell has. So when we talk about greatness, I feel we live in a great community. So hats off to every single one of the first responders, Public Works, everybody who did everything. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for what you did for our community.
Councilmember Freed?
George, thanks so much for coming tonight. I appreciate it. Imagine just the stress of what you're leading right now and leading your team. I just pray for wisdom for you as you move forward during this time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm happy to have a person like you and your company with such integrity to be able to move forward here in the city of Bothell. That's
Thank you.
the type of investor we love to see, and so thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
We're here as a city to help support whatever that you would need.
Thank you. Well, I will tell you that the leadership that not only yourselves, but the prior administration showed in moving everything around shows that you're thinking in decades. And if you move our hurdle that we have going on right now here a decade ahead, it's tragic. Fortunately, it's not as tragic as somebody losing their life.
Yeah.
Let's thank God that nobody did that. Great. Property can be replaced. We can work through how to manage making the Main Street what it should become 10 years from now. And we'll all go, wow, you know, we got through it with the first responders and made that happen. And now look at this. Isn't this great? This is now really, Bothell is becoming the future. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Thank you, George. And staff, I really appreciate it as well. I mean, to see what you did on Friday and Saturday and on is extremely impressive. We had our own family emergency on Thursday morning at 6:30, and I'll get choked up because I love my daughter dearly. To have 5 of my friends come at 6:30 in the morning and love on my daughter in a desperate time was a beautiful thing. So I love the city of Bothell, and I certainly love the fire department. Thank you so much for the integrity that you've shown and the care in times of emergency. It's amazing. Because you could do a job, but to bring your heart to it as well is a beautiful thing. Thanks.
Councilmember Sandberg?
Well, there's not much more to say except for just to add my personal gratitude to all of the hard work that everybody contributed from within our city, without our city, staff, citizens, everybody. It really makes us proud to be a part of Bothell.
Great, thank you. So I just wanted to add a couple comments. So I showed up at the fire, I think around 4 or so, and I ran into the chief and he said, go ahead and take a look. And so I was able to walk down Main Street, and it just gave me a whole new level of appreciation for what our firefighters and our public works crew was even there at 4 a.m., the police department. The whole thing was on fire still, and they were just trying to get the main fire put out. And I was walking down the street. I actually had shorts and flip-flops on. The director of Public Works, when I walked into the Emergency Operations Center, laughed at me because, like, oh, you're the one that had shorts on in the TV coverage. But, you know, it was really pretty devastating to see. And then it really hit home when Governor James, he called me directly and said, this is my cell phone. You call me if you need anything and we'll get it for you guys. And we've seen that from the community as well. We had so much food. I think we had to put food and water and supplies for the responders that we had to actually ask people to stop bringing stuff. That's a testament. And you should have seen the piles of food here and also at the operations center. I was there for most of the day on Friday, I think about 12 hours, and just seeing the camaraderie and the high spirits of the staff really was invigorating for me to be the mayor. I just have so much thanks for us being able to work together like that at a major emergency like that, as well as all the other fire departments. I mean, it was more fire equipment. It was like a firefighters expo. I mean, everything was there. All the equipment was out. It was really amazing to see. I don't know how it's done from the fire chief standpoint, how you manage all that stuff at the same time, but it was truly impressive. So I thank everybody in the community, as well as our staff, and as well as all the regional partners that have stepped forward in a big way to help us. So thank you. So my computer locked up, but I think we have we didn't have an agenda approval. Is everybody okay with the consent agenda, or do you want to pull items off the consent agenda? Actually, let's just do agenda approval, even though it's not on here. Is there any problems with tonight's agenda? Any changes? Seeing none. Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilmember McNeil. Is there any discussion on the motion? So I have one. The Friends of North Creek Forest are here in force, and I just wanted to congratulate them on another large step forward in trying to preserve the North Creek Forest. I know you've been at this for many years. I really appreciate what you guys have done for our community to try to preserve this forest, and we just have one more parcel to go. So thank you very much for what you've done for the community. Any further discussion? All right, vote. Passes unanimously with Councilmember Agnew and Spivey absent and excused. Next item is the new business, so AB 16-138, approval of professional services agreement for executive search firm to conduct recruitment of the city manager. And we have Human Resources Director Dean Perez to provide a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Last week I brought to your attention that we issued a request for proposals for a executive recruitment search firm to begin the city manager recruitment process. We did receive 4 proposals, and those proposals were vetted based on experience, cost, references, dependability, and responsiveness. All 4 were excellent proposals. There's one that stood out, and we provided a copy of that proposal in your agenda packet. That is the Slavin Consultants that we're recommending. Certainly, they were the lowest cost, but cost wasn't the overall factor. We did consider references, experience, and based on that, we're recommending the Slavin for your consideration. If you do approve it, then we're also asking you to authorize the interim city manager to sign a professional services agreement.
Okay, is there any discussion by council or any questions from council? Sorry. Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move the recommended action.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilmember McNeil to select Slavin Management Consultants to conduct an executive search for the next city manager of Bothell and authorize the interim city manager to sign a professional services agreement for the service. Any discussion on the motion? Go ahead and place your votes. Passes unanimously with Councilmembers Spivey and Agnew absent and excused. Next item of business, new business, is AB 16-139. Thank you, Mr. Perez. AB 116-139, appointment of con committee members for the street and sidewalk levy lid lift ballot measure. And I believe our Assistant City Manager, Peter Trotzen, will provide a brief presentation and hopefully some direction on how to vote this time.
Brief is correct. At your July 19th meeting, you appointed members to the pro and con committees for the fireworks advisory ballot measure. and for the Pro Committee for the Safe Streets and Sidewalks Levy lid lift. At that point, the city had not received any interest in serving on the Con Committee for Safe Streets and Sidewalks by the deadline of July 11th. So at the July 19th meeting, you voted to extend the application deadline to July 26th. Due to the tight turnaround between meetings, staff was unable to re-advertise in either the Seattle Times or the Bothell Reporter. However, staff did advertise on the city's website and through social media. At the time of publication of this agenda bill, 2 letters of interest had been received. They were from Troy Anderson and Jackie Hallstrom. And then 3 more were received today and yesterday from Benu Wyman, Roz Gorst, and Jeannie Zorns. The city is required to submit the names of Pro and Con committee members to both counties by August 2nd for the November 8th general election. Both Pro and Con committees are required to submit statements for inclusion in the voter pamphlet no later than August 11th for King County and August 16th for Snohomish County. Pro-Con rebuttals are due no later than August 16th for King County and August 19th for Snohomish County. So at this point, I'd ask you to select your Con committee members, and the clerk has provided simple ballots for your use, which will make it a little bit easier than last time.
Terrific, thank you. Is there any questions from council? Are we ready to, Deputy Mayor?
I have a question regarding, do we know if all these names are people who live in the city of Bothell? I ask because one of the numbers is a 253 and.
You know, I can't confirm that. I think that they all are members, and of course, I have an Oregon area code for my
Right,
phone.
yeah.
So.
Any other questions? No? I think moving forward, that seems like a hot topic for the council to pick people on the Con Pro Committee, so it'd be nice to get addresses in the future. Is that something that, in the future, not for this time, but in the future? Okay, well, I think we're ready to place our votes, so go ahead and fill out the 3 that you'd like to select and hand them down to the clerk. And we'll wait here just a minute while the votes are tallied.
Okay, so those that received the most votes are Jackie Hallstrom received 4 of 5, Benu Wyman received 5 of 5, and Jeannie Zorns received 3 of 5. So those are your Con committee people.
Great, thank you, City Clerk. So I think we're going to go to a quick break while we transition down to the floor for the study session, AB 16-140, which is the financial snapshot discussion with the finance director and the assistant city manager. So we'll take how long do we need? We'll start back up at 6:45. All right, so we're back on with the acting city manager. I believe you're kicking us off.
Yes, sir. We're going to take the workshop in two parts. The first part is mine and some of the work that we've been doing in response to the questions that came up when I did my one-on-one interviews with council. And then the second part is going to be with the finance director and a chance to look at some of the revenue expense information that has been provided to you, but it's been provided in different forms and different times. So we're trying to put it all together. But let me set the stage for what I'm trying to do, and hope this is what I understood that you wanted. What I heard from council when I was doing the one-on-one interviews about your goals and the vision for the future and all of that, was you wanted a more hands-on, more active role in the budget development process. Council had your goal retreat or your workshop in February, and you built some thoughts and some discussions along that. Meanwhile, the finance department asked people for their ideas on desired budget outcomes and that input. We've also been meeting with the community in the Bothell Community Conversations. The budget office itself, the finance department's been out there in the community getting input. All of that stuff has kind of filtered down, and we talked about it a little more than a week ago now at the staff and council workshop we had a week ago Saturday. That information I've been able to pull that together, and we're going to go through that here in a little bit. Laura's got a PowerPoint that will let everyone kind of follow along. You'll have to suffer along with my lack of PowerPoint skills. Laura and I will have to get our signals right as we go. I'm more of a flip chart guy, but this will maybe be a little more polished. But in the context of more and earlier council involvement in the budget development process, we're building on what you had already started with the discussions you had in the early part of the year, the community input that you were gathering just before I got here, and then the council one-on-one interviews and the really bringing that to a head about 10 days ago at the workshop. So we had the, what was that? There was a, I forget the exact date of the workshop was, I have to go back and look, was on Saturday the 16th. And then we set this date of tonight of July 26th because you had previously scheduled August off. And so we had to accelerate our budget process and cycle to respect that a lot of people already made plans. So the Saturday workshop really focused on the financial foundation, the big picture, and largely the capital facilities plan as it stands. Tonight, we want to talk about the operating budget and the other half of the budget. The budget's a little over 80 million total, roughly 40 million capital, a little more than 40 million operating. So we've kind of talked about the big picture, the reserves. We talked about the local infrastructure financing tools, the LIFT funding. We talked about the capital facilities. All of that was what we discussed at the Saturday workshop. Now we're going to shift and we're going to talk a little bit more about the operating budget and where that stands. We have since we last met, however, hit the tote board, and we have added up the requested department budget requests, and we have updated our current revenue forecasts for fiscal 17 and 18. I won't hold you in suspense. The bottom line is we're about 2 million short of what we would need, where revenues are about 2 million less than requests. But remember, you are early in the budget process. I get my bite at the apple next week. So the departments haven't sat down with me and with the finance director. Tammy and I will have that discussion with them next week. But this is an intent tonight to give you a snapshot of where we are in this process. And we will submit to you a balanced budget. It will not have the shortcome or shortfall in it. but I don't know how those pieces are going to fit right now. That's the purpose of my discussion with the department directors next week. So where we are in the process, the Saturday workshop set the financial stage and the capital discussion. Tonight, we're going to talk about some of the trend analyses. One of the things you told me was you as a council wanted to be able to look back on revenues and expenses, looking back in time. And we decided to cut it off at about 2006 because that was pre-recession, and then you could see the effect of the recession. And now we are slowly starting to come out, and we're starting to see some positive things coming out. And of course, everybody's got their fingers crossed that they'll be able to talk me into more as they seek to rebuild what was held down during the course of the recession. I'm publicly letting everybody know that that's not going to be easy because I got to find $2 million at least, assuming the streets and sidewalks levy passes. If that doesn't, I've got another problem that I've got to deal with. Then the next step up in the budget process, and we've decided, you decided, we talked about it at the Saturday retreat, but we decided to call the Capital Facilities Committee. It'll be meeting on a Monday, the 8th or 9th, Monday the 8th, and we've decided it'll be the Capital Facilities Committee meeting, but it'll be a committee of the whole of the city council. So legally, everybody on council can attend that meeting if your schedule permits. Then Tammy and I have to put together a balanced budget, and that'll happen mid to late August. And we'll get that done. And then our intent is to come back to you with a budget that actually has a trial balance to it. And we won't give you all the full budget document at that point, but we'll give you probably a version that looks very similar to what you're seeing tonight, but actually reflects my recommendations. Right now, what you're seeing are the requests and our best estimates on the revenues. And I'll weigh in on that discussion here starting next week. And then on September 13, will be a kind of a draft budget proposal that will actually get you a sneak peek at. And we'll start looking at if the public safety sales tax has passed. There's some things, I heard Sheriff Trenery in Snohomish County talking this morning on the radio, and he was quite clear about how he wants to use a lot of that public safety sales tax money to address the issue of heroin and opiate addiction. And when we get to your council goals, you'll see that when you rank them, that actually was, I think, number 3 or 4 in the council goals as an issue to be addressed both with the municipal court, probation, and law enforcement. And it's probably a strategy that's going to involve social workers and community service workers, not just law enforcement or public safety people. So the Saturday workshop set the financial stage. The workshop tonight talks about the operating budget. The capital facility plan then has to get updated because what we shared with you on the Saturday workshop was where it stood. Now we've got a bunch of projects that weren't in that have to be reevaluated. And that'll be the purpose of the committee meeting in August. And then we'll balance this budget out and get you a draft working budget to look at in September on the 13th. And I'll get some additional feedback from you at that point, and we'll put a final budget proposal together, and we'll get that to the public and on the public record in October 11. So I think when we talked Saturday, I said, is that sequence, those steps in building the budget, does that work? And I think what you said was yes. So if you want more, we're available in August if you'd like. Otherwise, that's the game plan. So let me just stop there, Mr. Mayor. Does that, as a game plan, does that sound like what council was asking for?
In the retreat, but there's some council members that aren't here, so just to check in, does that sound like a good game plan? Good? Sounds like we're go.
Okay. Well, let me shift to the first part then, which is my presentation. I mentioned that I'm trying to do several things. One, I mentioned briefly, we want to look back to 2006 on the historical information. We want to also look forward out. How far did we go, Tammy? 2022? No, 2022. So looking back to pre-recession in 08, 06, I think, and then out the 2 years of the 17-18 budget and 5 years beyond that. So we got a forward-looking 7 years, and backwards, I don't know how many years that is, but it's back a ways. So there's the data. I kind of refer that as, it's kind of like when you're raising a kid and you put the kid up against the back wall and you see how tall they are and you mark them, and then, next year they get another, and eventually you're measuring yourself against yourself, or in my analogy, you're measuring the kid against their own growth. That's what the trend analysis, looking back and forward, does for you, okay? We're also trying to get some comparative analysis. How does Bothell compare to other communities doing similar work around us, and how do you make an equivalency judgment, whether it's a cost per capita or a workload per capita, that kind of thing. We've just really started that activity on the comparative analysis, and I'm going to share with you some of the information that we've had on police, fire, public works. Public works, you've seen a lot of the information on the roads stuff, but there's other information on public works we're still gathering, but also parks. So I want to do the trend analyses, looking back and going forward, and I want to do some comparative evaluation as we deal with it. I personally, as I look at this budget coming up for 17-18, I really think that we need to review what we've been doing and the way we've been doing business. And I think we have to seriously ask ourselves, it came up at the retreat, can we continue to do business the way we've been doing it? Or is that addressing the changing needs of the community? I think we need to seriously review what we're doing and how we do it. The second thing I believe, and that would be kind of an effectiveness evaluation, I think the second thing we need to do is I think we need to re-examine our costs and the actual cost of service elements, our efficiency measures. And then finally, I think we need to decide before we add any more personnel anywhere, is there a way we can reallocate and redeploy existing personnel within the existing budget after the re-examination? That's where I'm going with this budget. So a review, a re-evaluation, and a redeployment of resource, trying to get the most we can out of the baseline we have. Now, that may not be possible. There may be some things that we just have to add, and we'll be looking at those with a pretty critical eye. So with that, let me share with you, not intended to be a final product, but to give you an idea of the kind of information I'll have for you when we present a draft budget to you in September, and the comparative and trend analysis that will be complete for all the departments by the time we get to the September meeting. So the little packet Laura handed out here, and then you get to have the really fancy one that Tammy has, but that's in a minute. I've got more here. The first packet, what I wanted to share, Laura, is this where we've got our, yeah, this is the agenda. We'll scoop beyond that one. And this is on a couple pages. In your handout, the top 12 goals are on page 1. The PowerPoint kind of does it in a couple pages. But the number one goal of the council was safe streets and sidewalks funding. Obviously, if the voters support that, that then deals with that issue, or at least the maintenance of streets and sidewalks for the next 9 years. If it is not funded, then we've still got a problem. It's still a number one need. The second one, and I didn't talk about it during the fire report, it's not directly related to the fire, but has to do with the Main Street enhancements and the plan that's been done, and it's ready to go. They've been waiting to go to bid until they got grant funding. They learned that their grant funding did not come through. The probability of other grants having a higher chance of outcome, I think, is low. I think the other grants that they might go, we'll still try and go for them. But frankly, I think it's about a $6 million program. If we got out to construction in the spring, and I don't see any reason to wait. I think it's only going to cost more. And the cost avoidance argument says if we build it in 18, it'll probably be 7 million. If we build it in 19, it'll probably be 8 million. And then additionally, as Tammy pointed out, that will also hold back the redevelopment efforts and investments that would, but for the improvements, would also have gone forward. The cleanup that we need to do on the Main Street West extension and the enhancements of Main Street itself. And our recommendation is going to be to jumpstart that with an interfund loan, and then about 3 years from now, bundle that up with any other financing issues that you've got and look at a councilmanic bond at that point with an improved revenue stream as you go out about 3 years or so. The goal number 3, I had it wrong. I said it was 3 or 4, but it is goal number 3, is dealing with this heroin and opioid addiction issue. We have not presented to council a lot of the recent information. I know a lot of individual council members have seen some of this discussion that's been going on in both King and Snohomish County. And at some point, I'm going to want to ask Carol to actually report to you on how that's impacting us. But it is affecting the court. We're also looking at either the possibility of a drug court or a drug diversion, alternative sentencing type program. There's a series of things that we just don't have figured out yet. But if the public safety sales tax passes, it'll be a high priority for the use of that money. Again, if that tax does not pass, then I think it's still a high priority need. I just need to find a way to get it inside the budget, not outside. Goal number 4 is one that I guess it shouldn't surprise me. It wasn't on the list when I went into the workshop on Saturday, but it came up in the course of council and staff discussions. And that idea is that we want Bothell as a community to be a technologically smart city or smart community, and we want the city government itself to be able to interact with its citizens more in a more technologically advanced way, whether that's online bill payment or whether that's management of traffic signals and congestion management. There's just a whole lot of things there that we need to sort out. Public records requests, this is overwhelming the clerk's office and legal department. That's a real issue that tech strategy actually can be more cost effective than chasing some of the response issues. Goal number 5 was to restore the fire and EMS training. I really believe that got cut too deep during the recession. I do believe that the training budget needs to be restored. Whether I can put all of it in all at once will be determined when we look at the back row and the big picture, but I'm totally in support of that. I also learned as I went around with the chief and did my tours that we have backup equipment where we had to rob the staging equipment off of the backup apparatus in order to, we pirated from one to have the equipment we needed on our active units. Well, so our backup units aren't really backup ready. So we need to deal with that. Goal number 6, and we talked about this at the retreat. One of the issues that I'm hearing from the community conversations and in talking with staff and council is what's it going to take to keep Bothell Bothell? We were talking a little bit ago with Mr. Petrie on the plans that he has to rebuild the Mercantile building. How can he do that in a way that feels like the Bothell that people have known all their lives? Bothell's changing. You've got the downtown, the Canyon Park area, the industrial park area. Those are the urban centers, if you will, within Bothell. But the bulk of the city, the bulk of the neighborhoods are pretty much the same. What is it we can do that celebrates that character? James, you were talking about. what makes Bothell Bothell. And some of it are these different events and opportunities, places. A lot of the downtown planning is placemaking and creating places for people to gather, but they need events. And so you said goal number 6 was we want more. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean more city staff and more city money, but it may involve an alternate strategy of more involved volunteers, more community groups. There's a variety of ways to do it, but I think I'm totally in support of once you've met your basic facilities and service response needs, at some point you move to a higher level of community need, and that's where the events come in. Number 7 was, let's get started on the Canyon Park master planning, the downtown of North Bothell, it's been referred to. And how does that effort get going? We just learned, I guess it was just last month, Peter, that the Port of Seattle is reaching out to the communities within the Port District, and they're offering $1 per capita as a grant, has to be matched by the city. And we recommended to the group on that Saturday workshop, and I think the consensus was, yes, let's do that. So we're chasing the port grant along with city funds that we had targeted, which just wasn't enough to really get started on the North Bothell master plan or on the Canyon Park master plan. And so we're saying that, yep, that's how we think we can start funding that. There's related downtown parking, well, I'm sorry, goal number 8 is complete the downtown redevelopment. That involves the parking issues, transit-oriented development, parking garage, some of the short-term fix issues on parking that we've been talking about the last few meetings, and the Main Street East extension, and the earlier issue I mentioned as a separate goal, which was the Main Street enhancement. Goal number 9 is a needs-driven goal that council identified. We really haven't had an opportunity to really begin working on the issue, but it's affordable housing. And what does that mean, and what does that look like, and how do we start to address a full range of housing options? You know, there's certainly need in the community for those people who want a large lot, nice big home. That's an end of the spectrum. But at the other end, we're not doing a very good job of providing that, and everything in the middle, whether it's townhomes, apartments, mixed use, single family attached. There's a whole array of housing options that we need to identify what we have. I think Bothell's actually, as I drive around, got a pretty good mix, but it's this affordable end that, you know, and affordability in this end of the Seattle area is always a problem. So that's a goal that council identified. Goal number 10, and it's a part of the open space protection and preservation strategy. Part of being Bothell is being green. And when you look at the aerial photo, we don't have one in here, but you look at the aerial photo of the city, you see the downtown area and the developing UW Bothell and campus area as kind of an urbanizing center. And then you see the industrial park areas, and then around Canyon Park, the north. But other than that, you look around the rest of the city in a color aerial photo, it's green. And how do we keep it green? And part of that is acquiring some open space within what we can afford. And the Wayne Golf Course, the visioning process is ongoing to figure out what that would look like. The idea, I think, is that bulk of it would be held in open space. There'd be some active areas. We have to figure that out. But acquiring that, it's on hold right now because of the partnership with, I'm sorry, what's the Forterra Group has bought it, but they're not intended to be a long-term hold. And the intent there would be that we would probably end up with our share of the cost being somewhere around $5 million, that we would have to figure out when and how we deal with that. Goal number 11 somewhat relates to that and the issue I was talking about, which is Parks and Rec and open space partnerships. We don't have to own everything. If there are ways to work with the different community groups and not-for-profit groups to acquire land, but also to partner with the North Shore School District, the group that was here earlier, the Friends of North Creek Forest, is it? So partners with community groups. when I went around with John, it became very obvious to me that the first task, I believe, in Parks and Rec is to make maximum use of what we have. And that may be converting some of our grass fields that are part-year use into turf fields, artificial turf, where they could be used year-round. That would be a strategy to make more use of what we own. Another strategy is to partner up with the school district or other groups to be able to joint use other publicly owned facilities that aren't able to be shared, and maybe we can share them. The third thing is we're flat out going to need to buy parkland. And this came up, in the discussions with council earlier, is particularly in the North Bothell area. When you look at a map, they're park deficient. And then the fourth thing is going to be the actual purchase of open space to be preserved as open space. And that's a part of what it's going to take to keep this this balance, as Bothell seeks to balance between managing growth and continuing the economic development, which helps bring the cost of services down. So all of that has economic positives. But at the same time, it has to balance with the character of the neighborhoods, the environmental protection that people love about Bothell. So it's this balance that we're trying to find, both looking at the goals, the way you frame them, but also the budget as I will present it. Goal number 12, it's not quite a Dave Letterman top 10, so it's our Bothell top 12, was a need for citywide training and team building, and looking forward, whether it's succession planning or organization development. We just finished talking about an excellent organizational response to this fire incident. What we need is that kind of organizational response every day. And the incidents like this, they bring out the best in an organization if it's really ready. They also bring out the worst if we're not. So fortunately, the best showed up. But we need to be able to do that every day in every area. And I'm not sure we're hitting that all the time. Then the goals start to drop off, and I didn't list them. The top 12 was what I numbered. And there we go. I'm going to go through these others real quickly, but you can see they got, when I asked council to rank them by stars, they got fewer. And making systems improvement and process streamlining, looking at our emergency preparedness, community education, not so much the staff, but how do we engage the community in that? Community policing, the outreach, the proactive approach that Carol talked about, customer service tracking and more of a customer service center approach, Parks Rec open space land purchases, remembering the actually getting the land or the money to buy land is almost the easy part. The ongoing operations and maintenance of it after is the tough part. Two-way communications as we get information out to the community, but also as we receive communication information back. Balancing the capital facilities plan and CIP with operations and maintenance funding, developing our federal and state legislative agenda, continuing to make good use of grant funds as they're available. Expanding community uses here at City Hall, making this more than the city's government building, but making it more the community's building. And also thinking about running events here, both in and around City Hall. And then the Bothell Gateway signs, getting probably 3 of them up as soon as Aaron and I can figure out how to do that. So let me stop. But those were the goals, and we're kind of in a workshop, so I'm not going to ask you to approve them, but that's what I saw and heard when I summarized those flip charts. And so I'll probably put it on the September agenda to ratify the goals. But did that look like what you said? Let me just stop there and ask that question.
Anybody? I have a quick clarifying question on goal number 2. So it says 6 to 7 million for the Main Street enhancements and Main Street West cleanup. So the Main Street West cleanup is lots D and then E, F, and G. And how that plus the Main Street enhancements, I think, how much is that
Main Street,
total?
Main Street itself is about $5.5 million today. By the time we get to it in the spring, I think it'll be about 6. we may be as low as $250,000 on our share on the cleanup sides, but it could be about $600,000 because Department of Ecology changed on us. It was a 90-10 grant, and they said they really were doing us a favor when they gave us the grants before at 90-10. Now they're saying it's a 50-50. So Aaron, you jump in.
Just so when we're talking about the downtown cleanup, that's what the staff has been talking about, and that would include the solvents from this particular block, the solvents on where the Main Street extension will be, and then still the remaining petroleum that we've been working on along the Crossroads alignment. We've talked over the years that I think we're right around, $3 to $4 million for that expenditure over the next couple of biennia. So I wanted to just clarify that there are expenditures in different areas of downtown for environmental cleanup. The projection, I believe, for the next biennium for the Main Street Extension area, the Bothell Service Center, is probably, for a city investment, probably in the arena of $1.5 to $2 million, I would estimate. So you'll be seeing that as part of the capital facilities plan.
Yeah, we'll come back to that at the August workshop. Tammy?
And that goes along with what the city manager was talking about, as in going ahead with the project and anticipating the fact that it will generate revenue, which will then pay the bond payment in later. But if we can do interfund loans and utilize money that is just sitting there, we can pay for this over the next couple biennia and then go out and issue bonds to basically pay ourselves back. And do so. I don't see short-term money going up quickly as far as the financing costs. So we might as well wait and go out in a few years when we have a better idea of exactly how much we need for each of these projects. Build the project, pay yourself back. Build the project, pay yourself back, instead of bonding up front and guessing at how much something's going to cost you over time. Don't bond until you're ready to start paying interest, or you need to.
So the grand total, I guess, for the next biennium for the cleanups as well as the Main Street extension or enhancements, sorry, that's what.
Yeah, no, this was not intended to be a shortcut to the CFP. This was really intended, if you're going to do the Main Street enhancements, it's $5.5 million now, going to be $6 million in the spring. We need to get that. And then to finish it up, could be anywhere as low as $250,000 on the cleanups, just on the Main Street part, to $600,000 for our share. But if you go beyond that, back to the goal of finish downtown, then there's more stuff that's going to be in the CFP.
Yeah, because I guess when I put my dot on that item, I was thinking more about Lot D and Lot E, F, and G to get them clean and clear so that those can be redeveloped.
So Peter, you've been, any comment, or Peter's been the point on all this?
No, as far as the figures are concerned, I'd go with what Aaron had given you. But that is a priority that is separate from the Main Street Enhancement Project.
Yeah, it'd be part of the larger downtown.
Right, and because it's actually the contamination on this block that's contaminating E, F, and G. So the Bothell Service Center contamination is what's impacting Block D, but it is the old Ultra dry cleaner that was on this property, the plume that extends down to roughly 522, that's impacting the block on the east side of 522 and Bothell Way. So again, we'll talk more about it, but I would say probably in the range for the next biennium for those downtown cleanup needs, I would say city share in the arena of $2 million or so. So in addition to the Main Street enhancement of around $6 million. So you're probably looking 8 or thereabouts, but more to come in a couple weeks.
And we'll be able to ask for more help as we go through this process as well. This is what we know today, but we also know that if we went out and bonded today, the interest and principal payment would be about $75,000 for each. I'm not saying this correctly. For each million, it's about $75,000 in an annual payment. So looking at that, the revenues that we would bring in, since when
this area was basically redeveloped and we knocked everything down, we lost $600,000 a year in sales tax. So I will guarantee you that what gets redeveloped after this takes place will be in excess of what the payment is going to be. So it just makes good business sense to move forward instead of waiting to come up with the cash and having the actual project increase in value. And now we are into the CFP, but we'll get there.
And so you're talking about the cleanup versus the Main Street enhancement?
The cleanup and actually the enhancement, yeah. Got to clean it up too.
And the enhancement, okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Sandberg?
So back to this issue about the cleanup. So you're anticipating in the next biennium, we will be spending $2 million total in cleanup for downtown Bothell, so that would include the Ultra site here, the Bothell Service Center site. And are we assuming, does that mean that we've finished our obligations to clean up elsewhere on the North Shore School District site and that cleanup is done?
So the cleanup that we're focusing on for the next biennium and beyond does not include the North Shore School District cleanup. We've currently suspended the cleanup on what we're now calling Block P South, which is where the remaining contamination on the school site was.
Okay, that's another question, I guess.
Okay.
And so if we expend the $2 million to complete the Ultra site and the Bothell Service Center cleanup site, at what point do we get the consent decree from the Department of Ecology?
So I believe there are approximately 6 consent decrees in play right now between the petroleum sites that we've been cleaning up and the solvent sites. So the petroleum sites, I believe for the most part, we're getting close. We've submitted some what they call RIFSs on those sites and received comments back from ecology. So we're actively engaged and working towards getting those resolved. The solvent sites are taking a little bit longer, and
Ultra and Bothell Service Center are both solvent sites.
Correct. And we don't anticipate that those will be done and completed in the next biennium. I want to make certain that you're aware, particularly Bothell Service Center will probably take longer.
So cleanup won't be done, but we don't have to wait that long for a consent decree.
Correct. What we're trying to get to is a consent decree for the Bothell Service Center before we start cleanup, instead of going into the agreed order process that we have with our other cleanup sites. So consent decree requires a process with the Attorney General's office too, so it has a little more teeth to it, because not only do you have ecology's commitment that cleanup is all they're going to request, but you also have the Attorney General backing that up to say, if the city and its partners clean it up to this extent, we're going to let you go, essentially. So our target has been to get to a consent decree this year for the Bothell Service Center, so we can actually start the cleanup according to that consent decree. We're working with ecology.
Let me jump in. That we got off a little bit of track, but I mean, it's fine. It was like a discussion we need to have. But that will definitely be the discussion with the CFP when we look at that in August. And what I was trying to do on these goals was say, each of these, as you look at them as pieces, there's some there that have some pretty big chunks. That's what I was trying to indicate with the little shorthand. And the downtown, complete downtown, I didn't put any number in there because that's all going to be a part of the CFP discussion. So there's 2 million plus probably there as well. The question I asked was, does this list reflect your goals? Because that's where I'm going with the budget. So if that's generally where you are, at a regular meeting, I'll ask you to approve it. But is that making sense? Is that what you saw? Is that what you said? Is that what you meant?
Did you want to finish up, Councilmember Sandberg?
Yes, I mean, I think that captures what I said. I bring up, though, these detail-oriented issues because it speaks to the larger mission of completing downtown redevelopment. And, the Seattle Times article after the fire, the headline was "Uncertainty After Bothell Fire." Well, there's no uncertainty about the direction that we want to go and with the city. but we do have roadblocks ahead of us that we are working towards that are external to our efforts.
Yeah, and you would listen to some of the media, you would think all of downtown Bothell burned, and I got into a little bit of a row with staff because I was getting picky about what do we even call this fire? And I said, well, we should call it the Mercantile building fire. And I was told, I said, well, it's fine, but they were already talking about it as the downtown or the Main Street. I said, well, there were parts of Main Street burned. I'll call it the Mercantile Main Street fire. But I am not saying it was the downtown. I don't want people to think downtown Bothell burned. And the same thing with Main Street. Most of Main Street is doing great. And as soon as we can get it open again, they'll be doing fine. So, yeah, I think I may add a few footnotes here about some of the downtown costs, because there's still more to go there that's in the millions.
So there's a couple more comments from
Okay.
council members. Councilmember McNeil.
Yeah, so I think you pretty much covered it, Bob. We're gonna clarify some of these goals that we have more in depth as we go through the process. Because I kind of agree with the mayor that during the process of putting the stickers on, I was maybe I might be a little bit confused as to what the Main Street, because I'm thinking more of the redevelopment, but it might be downtown Main Street. So I would love to see that kind of separate out as two different projects so that I understand.
Would you want to take a sticker back and make that less? I mean, or are you saying you're okay with it? We just need to be clear what it is.
I think we just need to be clear with what it
Okay.
is. I mean, we're at 67 stickers as it is, and we have.
Yeah, you added them up. I probably missed it. I got to go back and check. I kept the raw documents. James said, well, with 7 council members and 10 each, there should be 70 stars. And I only counted 67. So I didn't add it that way, but I'm going to have to go back and see if there was any stickers on there that somehow didn't get on this. I've got to double check that.
Yeah, so it does look like what we came up with in our meeting. The one thing that I would say is that everything on this list is stuff that council members and staff and everybody discussed. And while we may prioritize things as the most important, I don't want, if we have the opportunity, to make sure that we continue to look at some of these things. Because emergency preparedness, as we can see, you never know when it's going to happen, and you need to be prepared. So while it might not be the top of our list, it's still, I won't speak for the rest of the council members, but it's still high priority on my list because we need to be prepared for things like this. So
There's nothing dropped off the list. It's just as we focus the budget, I already mentioned that the requests are about 2 million more than the current revenue. That you can solve in one of two ways. You raise taxes and have more revenue. That's one option, not particularly popular. Another option is to focus your priorities and bring the request down within the available revenues. That's where I'm headed right now. And in order to do that, though, I needed to be clear that these are the goals you want me to focus on. The other items will take lower priority. They're not going off the list. They're going to get assigned to a work plan somewhere, but it might be out a couple of years. Well, Andy, let me finish any council comments, and then I do want to ask David, our Planning Commission chairman, to join. He and I had quite a conversation today, too, about these goals. So.
Okay, just one more comment that I know of. Do you have any comments? Councilmember Freed?
Great. David, welcome. Nice to see you. I saw you at a distance last night at John Howie's, another community event that we had. Councilmember McNeil, you brought up priorities, and I guess that's where I want to go on one of the questions, right? Because I know that council met on the special meeting a couple weekends ago. And I think at least 4 people were there on Saturday. And then I think a couple council members were given the opportunity to stick stickers on.
3 of you after.
3, okay. So there's really been no discussion since the full majority of stickers have been put on minus 3. I kept the 3, and I want to put them all on fire and EMS today, right?
Oh, you held back on
I'm
us,
just kidding. No, I put all of my stickers on. I think you gave us 10 total or something, if I recall. So I guess the priorities, you said that number 1 is safe streets and sidewalks. Since all the stickers have been put on since the meeting, has been further discussion to really prioritize that as number 1, and then number 2, or like Councilmember McNeil says, really, are they priorities, or all one of those with 5 stickers on there equally have weight?
Yeah, you've got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them that had 5 stickers, and you had 1 that had 4. And they were pretty clear at the top of the list. They were, top of the group.
Yeah.
And they're going to be first in the hopper.
Okay.
And I don't see anything on the list of 12 that we're not going to be able to include in the 17-18 budget.
Okay.
If
So
that
because you
answers
said
that.
that number one was safe streets, that's our priority, and I don't know, I wasn't at the discussion, but there were only 4 there, and now the full stickers are on. I would rather see that maybe all 5 of those with 5 stars, or if I'm counting correctly, are equal in importance, unless the council now says, all right, now that we've seen really what's on the heart of everybody, let's prioritize the top 3 or whatever, if that would be the right process. Because I think your question is this the right process, and do we have ratification from council? My ratification would be, let's weight all those equally, or come back as a full council and discuss really if those 5 are, we want to prioritize them.
I'm going to do all 12, so it doesn't matter how you want to balance them.
Okay. And then there were a couple questions about each individual one of these. Is this the right time, or are we going to have another opportunity to do
No,
that?
this would be good.
Go ahead. Okay. You mentioned a statement, review what we are doing as a city and how we do it, and consider a cost of service. Are you talking more like the planning and development side? Are you talking emergency response, charging for 8 cars? What does that mean?
Yes, to all of that, and
Okay.
more.
And more.
I just think it's time to have a fresh look at how we provide service. I think if you'll see it when we get into the second part here with Tammy, you'll see some very incremental kinds of movement in some department budgets, and you'll see some big jumps in others. And I think all of that can be understood and explained, but without some evaluation, I think more of the same, just keeping on, I don't think you can afford that.
Okay.
And so I think we need to be, what is the Plato was, an unexamined life is not worth living. In the case of budget, an unexamined program is not worth funding. I think we got to take a hard look at what we're doing, and then see how does that fit with the priorities that are, at least on this first page, and then build a budget around that. And then in October, then I let go of it, and you guys take over.
Well, and then that gets to what I think is my last question, and that is, there's a counting on or planning for that the ballot measure is going to pass. I do believe that's going to be a difficult measure to get 60% of the
You
population.
don't have 60, you need 51. It's a levy lid lift, it's not a bond sale. So we need 50% plus 1.
Okay, so 50%
but you're right,
plus
that
one
still could be
person, I
tough.
think it's still going to be difficult based upon the percentage of the increase of this.
Right.
So if it fails, are we going to come back together as a council and say, all right, now these are the things we want to adjust? Or are we going to say, voters, you said no to the tax increase, we still want to implement all the policies that were in that ballot measure, so we're going to have to increase taxes ourselves or reduce other areas? Or are you going to say, all right, council, we need to prioritize what was in that ballot measure, or what of those items in the list of 6 or whatever are our priorities?
We did discuss that some on the Saturday. I referred to it as Plan A and Plan B, and there also was a discussion of a Plan C. Plan A was if Streets and Sidewalks passes, and we've got that resource and that goal met, and then we're working to meet all the others, pretty much business as usual, maybe with some adjustments here and there, depending on what comes out and my thoughts over the next month. That would be Plan A. Plan B would be the Streets and Sidewalks fails. I've already stated publicly that I will not recommend taking that hit on streets. I don't believe that it is responsible for me to propose to let your streets fall apart. And I will not do that. I think you need at least 2 million, more than what you're currently spending. We're going to talk about how that tracks in a little bit when we get to Tammy's part. There's, I think, 2 ways you get another 2 million in the worst case. One is raise taxes that you do have authority to raise, whether that's transportation benefit district, utility taxes, fees and charges. There's a variety of things you can do. And you might be able to get $1 million that way. And then taking a hard look at things that are currently above the line that are unmet needs that maybe need to come back in under the line. And that would be Plan B. And those cuts would affect all departments of the city. I would not be playing favorites. And it would be based on the comparative trend analysis and the comparative data. And right now, you do an awful lot of budget decision-making anecdotally, based on what you have seen and heard from people, and very little on the basis of the data. And I don't think that's a way to run a city. And we will be having that discussion. I do not intend, when the election is what, November 9? November 8? Okay, I don't intend to show up on November 9 and say, well, now what do we do? My intent would be to have that Plan A and Plan B discussion with you in September.
No, that's good. That's what I was
Plan
asking.
C is another option, which says streets and sidewalks passes, but we still do the cuts and the reallocations. That's a Plan C hybrid. So, and there's probably D, E, and F.
A lot of uncertainty,
yeah.
a lot of decisions to be made.
But we did talk about that a little bit, Josh, at the retreat, and I think the nomenclature is hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
Okay, thanks.
I think we're ready to move on.
Okay, I did want to, real quick, like, there's, I had a really interesting conversation this morning for about 2 hours with David, and is it Valit? How do you, Valit? And David came in, had some questions. The next thing I know, it was one of those conversations. And there's about, well, the Canyon Park master planning, completing downtown, and all the subsets related to that, affordable housing, and then working with Parks and Rec on Parks Rec open space issues and community services, that kind of thing. There's some things that go beyond the council, beyond the staff, as we start to involve the city's family, if you will, the committees, the commissions. And we decided this morning to have a workshop in September to work with the Planning Commission. And where's John? He's gone. He was here earlier. Want to do the same thing, huh? He's at the park. Oh, he's at a park meeting. Okay. We want to do the same thing with the Park Commission, but to take these goals and translate them into a work plan for your committee commissions in support of what you're doing. And what I would like to do at those meetings would involve at least 2 or 3 members of the council, along with the relevant staff, in helping them each develop their work plan so that we start to get some alignment between the council's goals and priorities, the staff's workload and operations needs, and the work that the commissions and the committees are doing. And then as we roll that out, I think we then have a message that we can share with the community on how we're pulling together and working together. That's what I hope to achieve between now and giving you a balanced budget on October, whatever it is. So if that, I don't need as much time for the rest of my stuff. I did take a draft at a Bothell roadmap. And I give credit liberally to the city of SeaTac, where I showed you their copy at the workshop, but I've kind of formatted this as a way on one page to convey what we've just been talking about. We have my version of what I think the vision statement is or should look like. Now, that's going to have to go through a whole discussion process before it's final, but it's not what I referred to as the Bothell cheerleader vision, which I didn't like much, was the vision that you have, that you adopted in 2003 or something. This, I think, embodies the elements that we've been talking about. So at this point, it's just mine. We can put a big marked draft on it or something. No pride of authorship, but at some point, we're going to have to discuss that. I did take the values out of the interviews that I had with council, and these reflect the discussions we have. There may be some others that you think of that need to be articulated. The strategies came largely out of your February workshop and some of the discussions we had over the last month. And then the goals are the 12 that we just highlighted. And I can make a little asterisk there, Jess. These are not in priority order. They are for reference only. So I like that, if that makes some sense. My intent would be, at least as a working document, blow it up, have it available in the council chambers, and print it on plotter printer paper, and then have employees put it up in their office so that they know what the game plan is. Then the strategic calendar pretty much built on the discussion that you guys had in February, where you said, well, we want to deal with streets and sidewalks. We don't want to put multiple issues on the ballot, but we're going to have to deal with what do we need to do with fire training and facilities and equipment. What are we going to do for parks and open space? What are we going to do for the Canyon Park process? what are we going to do for partnerships relating to relating to Parks and Rec? So this is something we're going to need more discussion on, but right now it's kind of what I'm hearing from you all, and at least for this part, that's kind of where I'm headed with the budget. So I'm not asking for approval because you're just seeing it, but it should look familiar because it really came from what you were doing in February and the discussions we had here over the last month. Now, comparative data, and this is only a start. It's just to give you an idea of the kind of thing we're looking at. Remember I said trend analysis would go back to 06 and out to 2022, and we're going to get to that here in a second. I know you're just dying to get into that. But from a comparative standpoint, if you look at taxes, Bothell's right smack in the middle of what total taxes are for other communities around us. The total city tax rate right now is about $1.41. It showed a little higher here because this was an older, this was, I think, 2015. Meanwhile, our rate has actually come down in 16 and it's going down again. Our current base rate's about $1.31. There's 1 year left, Tammy, on the debt service, which is a 10-cent levy. So we got one more year. In 2017, we'd be at 141, and then it will drop to 131 or lower. I won't go into how property tax rates work. That's another discussion for another time. If you add the streets and sidewalks on top of it, we're still going to be under $2 a thousand for the city's share. Our statutory limit is $310. So without the streets and sidewalks, we're just about under half of our statutory limit. And if you add streets and sidewalks, we're at about 2/3 of our limit, and wouldn't put us out of line with surrounding communities. We also took a look at some service level indicators.
City manager, or just real quick, just looking at this list of cities, how many of them have a fire district? Because that's not included, right, in that.
This is the city-only rate. No, it does not include, I don't know, good point. We need to find out.
Well, I know Kenmore, Lake Forest Park.
Yeah, with fire, yeah.
Do not, they also have an additional fire.
Right, good point.
Just wanted to point that out to council.
Yep, and that could put us even lower in comparison and about in the middle with it. So that's a good point. I need to pick that up. Again, this stuff we're just pulling together. And I'm trying to show it to you tonight for the kind of stuff I should have for you by the September workshop. Police, I got this information from PD. Interesting on call volumes, on response times, cost of service, gives you a feel for how we compare to some of the other communities around us. Same thing with parks. John put together a chart. We're going to put it into a consistent format with the others so it starts to look the same. But from a parks employee, parks maintenance worker to acreage standpoint, looking at some of those issues, and a cost of service issue, we're really low on the cost of service. John also revised the step chart to give you a feel for, if we start buying all this open space, what's that going to cost in the way of operations and maintenance? And I thought I had one on fire. Fire looks real affordable. Didn't get in the packet for some reason. Fire looks real affordable on the cost of service basis. Call volume actually per firefighter is pretty high, and an issue that I think the way we're staffed for the call volume we have is pretty efficient, but it's a long-term issue that we have to look at. Last in your packet, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tammy, is some of the material that we've been preparing for public consumption and obviously council copies. The one-page handout on safe streets and sidewalks, you've seen that before. That's been around a bit. Bottom line there is it's about $16 a month for a median household. The next one is a pie chart that Aaron revised. You'll remember earlier had the where the money was going by expenditure category. So personnel, materials, contracts, capital stuff. The public doesn't care about that. They want to know what's it going to do? What's it going for? And so this is what it's going for. This one is interesting. What did I do, Bob? Oh, okay, Chief just gave me that. We can have it updated tomorrow, Andy. This is an interesting chart. Can you go to that, Laura? I don't have, do you have the laser printer? Do we have that? We didn't bring it tonight. No, do you have it?
Just open it up.
I'm qualified to open the laser box. It's the trick. There we go. Gonna work. Can you imagine imagine if I drew a dotted line from the peak that we were at in '01 to where we are in 2015? But you see the dip that occurred in total streets funding.
Assistant City Manager, is there any way we can you grab him up? There you go. Sorry, I don't have a portable guy.
It's better. This is where we should have been just to be doing the same. But during the recession, you actually cut into that. That created this backlog that Erin's been talking to you about stuff that has dug her further behind, that now she's trying to catch up with and can't. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, this is the true need that's been growing faster than the base revenues.
So that's the green line, because I don't think people can see the laser
Oh,
pointer.
the green line is the upper line that is the total needs today as identified through the pavement management system, the streets and sidewalks. And that's the maintenance. It's not the capital improvements. That cost is above and beyond that. The money that we've had available is just above that kind of reddish or burnt red line. And everything below the dotted line there is the service cuts. What we need to do to get close to that, closing that gap, if the levy passes, we'd get another $4 million on top of what we've got. Meanwhile, we say, well, let's just stay the same. We'll just keep doing what we're doing. The problem is we've been ignoring the problem for the last 10, 15 years. And the deficit now is we're at a point where we have to start doing some chip seals and some crack sealing and some major repairs that are in that pie chart. And if we don't, if we have to do that, if we don't have the money for that, and if we don't have the added dollars from the levy, we are going to have to cut elsewhere in the streets budget, which at this point is people. Or we're going to have to put in money from elsewhere in the city to fill that gap. So that, it's essentially the same chart that I understood the problem when I said, well, streets funding, this is not new to Bothell. Streets funding has been relatively flat for most cities in the Puget Sound area. The gas tax itself used to provide about 50% of our annual maintenance needs for streets. It's now down to a quarter or less. The dollars, look relatively constant, but dollars per mile, we didn't do a chart on that, but the actual street dollars, gas tax dollars per mile has been declining. And so we're to push come to shove time. So this chart's an actually very interesting analytical chart. I'm not sure to the general public it gets them excited, but it's a pretty powerful tool. And before I had 2 arrows on a chart that Erin wouldn't let me use, because this said this is kind of what the costs have been, and this is what the needs are, and the gap is there. And Erin said, well, we can do better than that, so this is better than that. So with that, one of the questions, I'm kind of focusing on streets and sidewalks for a minute. One of the questions that keeps coming up is, well, what projects are you going to do first? Well, that's really the wrong question, because this is not a capital projects levy. It's not like we're going to do street A and overlay street B. This is a maintenance need, and what we've identified in the map are the street conditions. And as the dollars are made available, we'll apply the street dollars available in the CIP every year to the worst conditions. and we'll start working on the worst first. Now, you may, when you start to look at the CFP, there may be some balancing between pavement condition and neighborhood condition. There may be some things in and around schools that warrant maybe some more money going in that direction, that maybe it's a mid-level on pavement, but you might decide it goes higher. That's part of the CFP discussion. But we'll develop a 2-year plan every couple of years from this data. The other piece that's next to it is the map that shows the sidewalk needs. And Aaron, I don't know if we've identified the crosswalk needs apart from the sidewalk needs, but I looked at what the city of Kirkland did a few years ago when they did a similar measure that was supported, and that was supported during the recession, actually, but where they actually were looking at crosswalk issues. So if we have that, that would also be useful. But anyway, that I think is what we have right now on information relating to the Safe Streets and Sidewalks levy, where the money comes from, the history of the money that we've had, and where the money would go if the voters approve it. So that, Mr. Mayor, is my update for tonight on where we're going with trying to get you trend analysis information, comparative data, and information that you can share with the community on Safe Streets and Sidewalks. And with that, I'm done, and we can do whatever you want. If you want to take a quick stretch break, we're going to shift to Tammy and a bunch of charts I'm going to hand out.
We do have one council member that I think has a question or a comment. Councilmember McNeil.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I got two now. One would be, are we, during the process, the budgeting process, are we going to discuss, you said A, B, and C options. Are we going to discuss openly so the public can hear where funds would come from if that bond levy doesn't pass? Are we going to discuss that in an open
Well, let me correct,
session?
if the levy lid lift doesn't pass, because it's not a bond levy, and the reason I'm being precise about that is there is confusion on whether it's a 60% level or a 51%. Yes, that's my intent, to have that discussion at that September workshop. I just don't know what I would recommend at this point. I'm just meeting with the departments next week. Tammy just got the numbers added up and totaled that she'll hand out to you here right now, so we know what the size of the gap is, the delta. And it's about 2 million, which on a $40 million base, as a percentage, it's not a lot, but 2 million is still a lot of money. And so, and if I have to make it 4 million to pick up any shortfall under Plan B, that's now a 10% gap. That's starting to hurt.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to make sure that we're going to have that open.
That's my intent for the September meeting, exactly.
Okay, and then the second one is I wanted to see how council felt about, we have in the council goals on your Bothell roadmap, you list those numbers again, and I just wanted to see if everybody's open to just putting bullet points there instead of numbers. I think that, to me, everything else is just bullet points and not numbers. I think that would ease some of the, well, this is priority over that priority. So maybe we could just use bullet points. I just wanted to see how everybody felt about that.
I don't have a problem with it. The numbers are what they are, and I'll put in the budget what they are. But from a goal standpoint, that might be a good suggestion, because the goal is not put 5 million here or 6 million there. The goal is get it done.
Yeah, I just think if we're going to post it in offices and stuff
Okay.
like that, it would be good
Yeah.
to have. Okay, thank you.
So Councilmember McNeil, real quick too. So this is just a draft, and so we're going to have a lot of touches on this before it's final. So that, obviously, I think that's a good idea too. But there's also other things in here too that we're going to want to work on, and we'll work on it together as
Well,
we move
and what would
forward.
be useful, because we're not meeting in August, I guess we'll meet at the CFP, so maybe we can have some time, any feedback from council at the CFP meeting. But if you have comments or suggestions, if you just send me an email, we'll polish this up now, because it needs to go from being what I thought I heard to what you really meant. So that was kind of in the steps.
Is there any other questions for acting city manager? Councilmember Freed?
For this?
Well, just in general, we're not going to try to figure this out tonight. We're just transitioning from him to Tammy. So if you had any questions for the acting city manager?
Yeah, that'd be great. I like your suggestion on the bullet points. Just a little one, come for a day or stay for a lifetime. I always thought it was come for a day or a lifetime. But I like the stay for a lifetime. You're good with taglines. So my question on this, Safe Streets and Sidewalks, it is amazing to see from 1999 in 16 years, basically, to go from 500,000 or so, maybe it's 750,000, I don't know exactly where that line ends, in 1999 for our needs, to now to $12.5 million in 15 years. That's 11.5 over 15 years. That's extraordinary.
Actually, probably pretty modest, because, well, you guys are in the construction business. I mean, asphalt and concrete does not rise at the rate of the consumer price index. What do you see? Well, of course, the price of oil just went down the last couple of years, but we were seeing 10% a year increases in construction materials costs. And if something was a $10 million, or if it was a $1 million purchase item, at 10% rates, in 7 years, it doubles.
Well, there was the forgotten decade, which really was from 1999 to 2010 or so, where construction costs, I mean, obviously they went up in the upturn or whatever right before then everything dropped off in 2007. But if you compare it 99 to 2010, it's relatively flat. I would say definitely over the last 5 years, construction prices have increased 10 to 12% per year. But I think it would be level from 99 until 2010.
Of course, it is that is what it was. I mean, those are the actuals. So whatever you did, that was the issue. Aaron, you had a...
I just wanted to clarify what the stiff
Yes.
line is. So it demonstrates what our ideal level of spending would be, and what's driving it in particular is a 80 PCI pavement condition index rating for all of the city streets. So that's a large investment, as well as a steady sidewalk construction program that would fill our gaps, I believe, within, Steve Morikow, I'm looking, 30 years, I think, is what the target would be. So that's what that steep line is. So it's not necessarily that the costs have increased, it's what, if we had our druthers and money was no object, and if we truly wanted to build all those sidewalks and have an excellent pavement condition rating throughout the city, in addition to our ongoing operating costs, that's what that line represents.
I think that's helpful because, City Manager, you said that we've basically ignored city streets for 10 to 15 years. So with that statement coupled with this, it's a strong statement that you said, because I don't know that the city staff has ignored city streets for 10 to 15 years. So
I think if you look at that dip, I was trying to use the pointer. If you look at that dip, that's a pretty significant dip. You were almost to about a $3 million equivalent per year just in basic maintenance. You dropped down to about 2. That's a 30% drop, and that was not anywhere near being where you should have been to keep up. So if I was overly critical, I apologize, but in my professional assessment, I think you ignored streets at the expense of some other priorities. And those are choices. You know, communities have to make those choices, but there are consequences to those choices. And it's the old Fram oil filter ad. Streets are very much pay me now or pay me later. And if we don't pass the streets and sidewalks levy for 50 cents, your next measure will not be going back to the voters in a few years. Have you had enough yet? What do you think? No, you're going to be going out for probably $1, $2 in capital to rebuild streets. Because once the alligator cracking starts going and the subgrade goes, you're not into doing chip seals and overlays. You're now into the rebuild. So
I
if
think
I'm harsh on that, I apologize, but that's my assessment. I think
appreciate your apology. I think as budgets are put forward, you put priorities forward, which doesn't mean that you're ignoring ones. You just have to, especially in downturn years, and obviously then we've been in recovery, there's priorities that are made. And the decisions that obviously were made were by a majority of council and the community as a whole.
And some of this is kind of looking at the issues that I'm concerned about. When we get into Tammy's data, you're going to see some stuff that actually shows the return on investment for some of those other choices you made, where some of these other returns are starting to pay off. And that's going to give you the ability to start to come back and cycle back and address some of these unmet needs. But yeah, there's still a pile of unmet needs.
Cool.
Councilmember Sandberg?
Does the steep line for the needs, is that also reflected that if we defer maintenance, that the cost of maintaining our pavement condition index at 80 grows not exponentially, but significantly higher over time?
That isn't accounted for in the steep line. That steep line would be the cost of the current pavement program, our ideal pavement program. So if we stretched this out and we overlaid the curve for that deferred maintenance, it would grow exponentially from there, because each year you let things decline, it costs you more to get back to that 80.
So this is just a current picture. This doesn't even.
Right.
And then you
so
said,
that's why it ends at 2017.
Okay, and so you said that so that line represented our desire to achieve pavement condition index of 80, and what was it specifically about sidewalks?
The sidewalks would be to have a sidewalk program that would construct, and I believe, and I can get back to you on this specifically, but I believe it is to construct all of our existing sidewalk gaps within, I believe, 30 years. And I will have that information for you. I can provide it to whole council tomorrow.
All right, thanks.
So just to wrap it up too, the state of the roads reports have been posted on the city's website, and it's pretty easy reading for an engineering document, and it really does illustrate the situation that we're in from a preservation and maintenance standpoint versus the investment in rebuilding our streets if we don't do something now. So it's really worth even just looking through it, looking at the charts. You can really glimpse or take it. You can understand very clearly what we're facing. So. Thank you. This is a really good report. I appreciate you putting this together.
And it's a snapshot. We advertised tonight as a financial snapshot of the operating budget. The Saturday workshop was kind of a financial snapshot of the capital and the financial overview. Tonight was kind of starting to look at what are we looking at on trends and comparators. It's still very much a work in progress. So what I'd like to do is shift to some of the work that Tammy has worked on. And I don't know if you want to take a stretch break and then get into that or what, but it's not going to be Budget 101. Tammy's ready to keep this light, but I think there's some stuff that you asked for that I think is worth looking at tonight, and then we'll see how my week goes next week with the directors and then with the CFP, and then we'll get back in September with Plan A, B, and C.
So I do have a request for a bathroom break from a council member. So let's meet come back at 8:15. So we'll be in recess.